And we are live as it looks, it seems. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, thank you to Michael and Ivor for joining me in person. It's much nicer to be able to give the shir to a live, real audience, not just a live audience that's watching via Facebook or watching via Zoom. Good evening to those of you who are watching on Facebook. Good evening to those of you who are watching on Zoom as well. Thank you for joining. Let's just make sure this is open. This is open to anyone on or off Facebook. That's better. Okay. Here we go. So tonight we have one of those parashas that's really, really difficult to understand. So let's try and understand one part of this parasha first before we move on to other parts of the parasha. And that is to understand how to see the story. Especially the story of the brothers and Yosef, and then they sell Yosef, and then they change their mind, and Yosef goes down. And you read about this, and sometimes you think to yourself, my goodness me, these are the people that God chose as his chosen people. And it's more than that. I once said to someone, I said, if God had to choose one set of people, did he have to choose the most dysfunctional family he could ever find? When was the last time you've met anybody that said, we had a brother we really didn't like? What would you do with him? Well, we were going to kill him. And then what'd you do with him? Yeah, we changed our mind. We threw him into a pit of snakes and scorpions. Oh. But then we changed our mind again. So what'd you do? We sold him as a slave. So we're not violent people. We just sold him as a slave. It sounds almost a crazy story. And yet these are the avos. These are the shiftei kol, these are the shvatim. So we understand and we realize that there's something more going on over here than just what you're hearing or just what you're seeing. So how do we understand this? That's our question. Okay? So, here we go. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, this is what we're going to start with this idea. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky writes that somebody came to him and asked him the question, isn't it Lashon Hara to tell this entire story about the brothers? Sounds like Lashon Hara. The brothers said this, Yosef said that, and they did this, they did that. You read the entire story, it doesn't make anyone smell of roses. Yeah, right? So if it's not really a story that you read and feel very comfortable about, and it sounds almost like Lashon Hara, why isn't it Lashon Hara? That's the question that somebody asked Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky at first said, listen, it's not Lashon Hara because they're telling a story about people that passed away already. So there's no real, in halacha, Lashon Hara about somebody's passed away doesn't have the same severity. However, pardon? Yeah, okay. However, he then says something even better. He says, but then after thinking about it, really in reality, the story needs to be re-examined under a bit of a microscope to understand it properly, to then realize what we're saying and what we're not saying. Okay? He says, first of all, they still all remain shvatim. God still kept them on as the 12 tribes. And the proof that God kept them on as the 12 tribes is that they took them out of Egypt. All of them. Otherwise, God just said, look, you guys deserve to stay in Egypt. For that kind of behavior, I'm not keeping you. I'm not doing anything for you. Stay in Egypt. Goodbye. They took them all out, every single one of the tribes. And not only did he take them out of Egypt, he went one step further. Every single name of every single one of the tribes is inscribed on the breastplate. What's the breastplate do? Right? What's it known as? The breastplate is not only known as the Choshen, which is a breastplate, but it's called the Choshen HaMishpat. The breastplate that is there for judgment. Right? Mishpat is justice, judgment. And we say that the Choshen over here in this instance is Mechapra. When the Kohen Gadol used to wear the Choshen, when the Kohen Gadol used to wear that breastplate, it would forgive the Jewish people and the judges of the Jewish people for Ivus Hadin, for ruining or for making bad judgments. If there was a dayan that made a judgment that was incorrect, so how would he get forgiveness? If he didn't realize, so he would get forgiveness for his avera that he did for judging incorrectly through the Kohen Gadol wearing the breastplate. That's what the Gemara tells us. So it would sound very, very ironic almost to take 12 individuals or 10 individuals that did something which the Torah considers extremely wrong. They tried to kill someone, tried to kidnap him. To put their names on an article of clothing that should forgive people for bad judgment. Doesn't that sound a little bit awkward? Sounds weird. What? You want all the names of the Shvatim on a plate to forgive people for bad judgment? Aren't they the ones that made a terrible judgment call? They shouldn't be the ones to be on the breastplate. What are you saying? And the other thing that he says, well, so you'll find many times that in Chazal, they give it a different spin. Chazal look at it and they said, well, they had this, this is the reason they did this, or this was the reason they did that. They had specific purpose. But, Chazal explained it. They have another way in Chazal that it's explained. And they say that they saw Yosef as a rodef. They saw him as somebody who was trying to kill them, and therefore, in order, if somebody wants to kill you, Hashkem Hargoy, then you get him and you need to kill him before he kills you, etc., etc. That's correct in halacha. The question that then comes up from that, what Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked, and it's amazing that he's willing to ask that question because it feels almost like a question that you shouldn't be asking. Well, aren't Chazal just whitewashing the story here? You take out the book, you read the story. The brothers didn't like him. He seems to be some kind of kid with an ego problem. The brothers decide to get rid of him. How do they decide to get rid of him? First to kill him, then chuck him in a pit, then sell him on. And then Chazal say, you know what happened over here? And then Chazal say, you know what happened over here? He was a rodef. And they had a reason they did it, and they knew what they were doing, and it was all according to halacha. If you were looking at it as an outsider, wouldn't you say, come on, guys, aren't you trying to whitewash a story? Sometimes you try to give a good spin to a bad story, and anybody who's listening on the outside hears and goes, you expect me to believe that? Pardon? Too much benefit on the doubt. Almost, yeah. We speak about too much benefit of the doubt. It's interesting, Ivor. I was speaking to somebody recently, just 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, and we were discussing an individual. And he said, you know what? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't do X, Y, and Z on Shabbos. And I said, the halacha says you give the benefit of the doubt only to somebody where you have in doubt. You know this person is not Shabbos observant, and I know this person is not Shabbos observant, correct? He says, yeah, I've seen him do things on Shabbos. I said, then you don't have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't do it on Shabbos, because giving someone the benefit of the doubt means I'm going to try to see things the most logical way. The most logical thing to say about somebody that keeps Shabbos meticulously is that when you see him doing something on Shabbos that's wrong, what's the most logical thing to say? There's some reason. He forgot. He doesn't realize it's Shabbos. There's an emergency, whatever. Yeah, so you see a guy, if you see a guy with a hat and jacket driving in a car on Shabbos, you can assume he's probably Hatzalah. Yeah? Because if he's going to watch the football match, he's not going to be wearing a hat and jacket to the football match, right? He's not wearing, who wears a Streimel to City to the Etihad? Nobody does, right? Whereas, conversely, if you see somebody who does not keep Shabbos driving on Shabbos, so what are you going to say? You see him, he's driving with his Man City scarf and his Man City jersey and his car looking like he's on his way to the Etihad, and you say, there's an emergency, he has to go to the hospital, right? So do you know what we call people like that? Stupid and naive. Don't be stupid and naive. The Torah doesn't say that, Dan lekavschus, judging somebody favorably, you need to be naive for. You're not supposed to be naive in that instance. And so here too, it feels almost like naive to say that about the Shvatim. Oh, that's how you explain it. Fine, good. Enjoy.
When did they see him as a death threat?
Right, okay.
But
So,
yes, it's sort of, that's sort of superior and older than observed.
yeah.
But
So they felt that he wanted to take over his father's love and become the one and only and sort of shut them out. And they felt that that was a threat to their entire future and their entire Yiddishkeit and everything built upon them, and that's why they saw it as a threat. So what Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says is, why don't we consider this a whitewash? So he says the following, a very, very interesting idea, very beautiful idea. He says, if you look at what happens over here, and I mentioned this twice already, I specifically mentioned it. What was their original intention? To kill him. Says Yehuda, says Reuven, no, let's not do that. No. Don't kill him. What should we do? Throw him in this pit. With what? With snakes and scorpions. Oh, clever idea. Yeah? No, but we didn't kill him. Says Yehuda, come on, he's our brother. Let's sell him. Then they see that their father is in such distress about everything that happened, they say, we shouldn't have done this. What are you doing? So that's a very strange story. If you believe that your judgment was 100% correct, then how can you change 3 times? How can you change twice? 3 times, really. You changed once to say, let's put him in the pit. You change again to say, let's sell him. You change a 3rd time and say, you know what? We shouldn't have done this because our dad's feeling bad. I'll tell you something. Families of those who are on death row will feel very bad when they get executed. And what do we say? Have we ever not executed somebody because we felt bad for his mother, for his brother, for his wife, for his son, for his daughter? No. What does halacha say? Sorry. You gotta take the consequence of what you did. You're Machal Shabbos, you killed someone, you had a illicit relationship, whatever it was. We know that there's going to be a fallout. Somebody's going to get it over the head for that. We know that somebody's going to suffer for it. I can't help it. That's what the halacha says. And therefore, how come over here they're changing their mind when they see their father in pain? So father's in pain. If they believe that the halacha mandated, and this is what Rabbi Yaakov, we understand that they believe the halacha mandated for them to do this. So if the halacha mandates for them to do this, how can they then change and say, well, we feel bad because it wasn't so nice to our father? If that's what halacha says, that's what halacha says. So therefore says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, they understood, or they had the feeling that in order to safeguard themselves, their futures, they had to kill him. And then says Reuven, wait, you don't have to kill him in order to do that. There's another solution. You throw him in this pit, you're not physically involved in actually killing him, and then, we discussed this a different time, then already if he dies, it's up to God, and if he stays alive, it's because God didn't want that to happen to him. But why are we personally going to physically kill an individual? As soon as in the halachas of Rodev, the halacha of Rodev is as follows. If somebody's running after you, God forbid, and he wants to kill you, what's the halacha? You're allowed to kill that individual? Yes. What happens if he can turn around and break his knee? And then he won't be able to run after you and you'll be safe. Are you allowed to kill him? No. No, you're obligated to break his knee. But he says, but the guy will never walk again. It's still better than if I kill him. And if I can save myself in any other way, then I have to save myself another way. I'm only allowed to kill him as a last resort if I have no other choice. So says Reuven, we have another choice. Can't kill him. Says Yehuda, you know what? Even that's too much. Why are we leaving him in the pit? Let's sell him. Because in the pit, he still might get bitten by those snakes. So even that's a choice that we can make. Let's not even kill him. Why does he have to die? Or why do we even have to put him in a situation where he might die? Let's just sell him. And then they come home and they realize the pain that they've caused their father. And they say to themselves, do you know what? Was this what we should have done? If we really had thought about it, instead of being impulsive about it, could we not have thought of other ways to do this? Surely we could have found another way, or could have thought of another way to get him out of the way without causing our father that amount of pain. And therefore they even had charata, they even had remorse for having sold him. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, we can tell from the story that's happening over here. We can tell from the fact that they're so fickle, that they keep on changing their mind, they keep on doing things, that this was what's going on over here. It wasn't like, let's kill him. No, let's not kill him. What are you, schizophrenic or something? Within 3 minutes you decide, let's kill him, let's not kill him, let's sell him, let's throw him in a pit, what's your problem? Just decide what you're going to do. Keep on coming with new ideas. The answer is Yaakov Kamenetsky, they're trying to do what they can to safeguard themselves with the minimum harm to Yosef. So started off with let's kill him, then they move one step back, let's put him in the pit, they move another step back, let's sell him, and when they see that their fathers are upset, they said, we might have been able to come up with something else as well. We shouldn't have done that. And now, we have a tremendous amount of charata. Now we really have that remorse. This guy has been trying to find out. Mochi, this is the shir. I hope you can watch it. There's a shout out to Mochi here. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says. So when you look at this story, I think it's a very important idea to keep in mind as you look at the story, specifically this story of Yosef and the brothers, that reads so badly. To understand it through this lens changes things drastically and dramatically. Okay? Right. Now, we move on to the next idea. It says the following, Vayeishev Yaakov Eretz Megurei Ovev Eretz Canaan. Yaakov settled in the land of his father, in the land of Canaan. So Rashi tells us, not right at the beginning of the Rashi a bit further down, says, this is in Rashi, in Yosef and Shma'as Reishona. Rashi says, Va'od nidrash bo. There's another drasha that is said over here. Vayeishev, Yaakov settled. Bikesh Yaakov leishev v'shalva. Yaakov wanted to live in peace. Kovat olav rogza shel Yosef. And then the whole story of Yosef started. Tzadikim evakshin leishev v'shalva. Tzadikim want to sit in peace. Says, is it not enough that tzaddikim get the world to come? Well, they also deserve to sit in peace in this world? That's too much. It's not fair. It's either or. Either you get peace in this world or peace in the next world. But you want to say, you know what, God, make it really, really nice for you in this world, and then I'll be a great Jew, and then in the world to come, I'll also... So God says, look, that's not how we roll. That's not how it works. Many times, especially tzaddikim will have very hard lives here, but they will get a tremendous reward for all the different tests that they were able to withstand whilst they lived in this world. So says, that's what Rashi tells us. So now the question we need to ask ourselves is, but why is that so? Why is it that tzaddikim don't deserve to live in peace? What's wrong with that? Just leave me alone. I'll sit, I'll learn, I'll do my mitzvahs, I'll make enough money to be able to support myself. That's fantastic. Life can be so wonderful and so great. And instead, God throws all these challenges at us, makes things so difficult for us. Every single person has a challenge, every person. And I often say, I don't know if you'd agree with this. I've done this once or twice, and sometimes during shul when I'm sort of spacing out a little bit. I once looked around shul, and I thought to myself, can I find different people within the shul, and does anybody have a perfect life? And I went around and I found every single individual in the shul had some kind of problem. And if I found the one individual that didn't have the problem, it's either because he hadn't told me about it or because I didn't know him well enough. But as I went through the shul, I didn't find in a single individual that didn't have their struggles, including myself, obviously. No, I know, I also have my struggles. We all have struggles. But why can't we just make it easy? Tzaddikim say, God, make it easy on us. Let us just do your work. If you allowed me to sit and learn, and you allow me to sit and do mitzvahs without having to worry about anything else, how beautiful could life be? And God says, no good. What you want, peace here and peace there, can't have that. And specifically, when you look at Yaakov Avinu had a really traumatic time. When you think about Yaakov Avinu, in the last 30 years that he had gone through, first he had to run away from his brother. Then he spent 14 years in yeshiva. Then he spent 20 years by Lavan, a father-in-law who cheated him, who tricked him into marrying a second wife he didn't want to. Then he has his children. Then he has 100 times his father-in-law changes the salary that he has. We don't even realize what that means. I mean, Michael, have you ever tried to deal with people that change on you? You know, you have suppliers. You call them up and you say, I want to buy glasses off you. You say, sure, what do they cost? Say, I'll charge you £6 a frame. Let's make up a price. Yeah? You wish. Yeah, that's why they charge you £6 a frame. They're usually probably more expensive than that, or not necessarily. Pardon? They vary a lot, I'm sure. So you made a deal with a guy called £6 a frame, and you get a bill and it says £8. And you call the guy up, he says, hey, we made a deal on 6. He says, yeah, I changed the price date. All right, fine. Maybe last time you can deal with him. Calls you again and says, now it's £8 a frame you want. Yeah, you get a bill, £9. Like, forget it, I'm not buying from the guy anymore. He's crazy. Every 2 seconds he sends me a bill, he changes the bill. And then when you argue with him, he says, no, that's what we made up originally. And finally runs away. Then he's got to meet up with Yosef. Then he's got what happened to his daughter with Dinah and Shechem, which we spoke about last week. And Yaakov finally makes it up and goes, shoo! That was hard. He says, I think I need a bit of peace and quiet. God says, you want peace and quiet? How dare you? What do you want from the poor man? He's just had 30 years of hardship. Leave him alone. You know, sometimes you come home after a hard day, and so if your kids come running over to you, and you're just like, okay, today, Daddy had a hard day. Everyone just go back to the couch, do whatever you want to. I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to have a bit of chocolate, or I'll have some wafers, or I'll just sit on the couch and read a book. I need 20 minutes to detox, then I can deal with you guys. You ever felt like that? I mean, you just want quiet. I just want quiet. Just leave me alone. For that little bit. Almost not every day. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. So, what's going on over here? So Rav Schwab says a beautiful idea. He says Yaakov Avinu, as his forefather Abraham and as his father Yitzchak, they had a job. Their job as their forefathers was to let God's name be known throughout the entire world. That was their job. That was their mission in life. That's why God had chosen them. Avraham Avinu made it his life's mission to tell people about God. He made this hotel, and people would come. He would give them to eat. And when they were finished, he says, well, how much do we owe you? He says, you don't owe me anything. All you got to do is one simple thing. You got to thank God for it. God, who's God? Let me explain it to you. There's a benevolent God that gives us everything. He wants nothing in return from us other than a bit of devotion. That's all you need to do. You need to say, thank you, God. If not, it'll cost you a few £100. All right, thank you, God. That's how it goes. And he let God's name be known in the world. Yitzchak also also did that in a much smaller measure than Avraham Avinu, but Yitzchak also did that. And Yaakov Avinu says, I've gotten to the point where I am now finished. Just keep to myself. Keep learning on my own. I want quiet. I want peace. I don't have to deal with anybody else. And God says, no. You can't do that. You have no right to stop from spreading God's name all around the world. That's your mission. That's what I tasked you to do. So you said, well, I've had enough of it. I'm now sitting back and doing nothing. We don't have that. So Yosef, the story of Yosef happens. Yosef makes his way down to Mitzrayim, and you read about Yosef. What's the one thing we say about Yosef all the time? Yosef is constantly speaking about God. When you read about Yosef in Mitzrayim, Yosef, page number, comes up twice. We're page 214 in the Art Scroll Chumashim, verse 3. So that's chapter 39, verse 3. Lamed Tes Gimel. Vayar Adonai of his master saw ki Hashem iter, that God's with him. And anything he does, Hashem atzeh b'yada, God gave him tremendous hatzlacha. God gave him tremendous amount of success. Even his master, who is a pagan, looks at this guy and goes, wow, this guy must have some kind of really great God behind him. I've never seen a guy as successful as this. This guy's great. God says that, and he sees that God's with him. And Rashi says, Ki Hashem ito, God's with him. Shem Shemaim Shogim Befiv. He uses God's name. So people say to him, Yosef, how are you doing this morning? He goes, Baruch Hashem. Who? Baruch Hashem. What's that? Thank God. Praise the Lord. Thank God? What are you thanking God for? Don't you realize there's a God that creates the world, that gives you everything that you have, etc., etc. He's telling people about God. Yosef's doing that in Mitzrayim. And then, by the way, Yosef ends up in the prison. And they have the dreams. And here we are on page 218, chapter 40, Mem, Pasuk Ches, Pasuk 8. They say to him, Chalam, Chalamnu, we had a dream of Fosaino, so there's nobody around to give us a translation of the dream. Vayom Aleim Yosef, and Yosef says to him, Halo Leilokim Bisronim. God gives the translation to dreams. Sapun Ali, tell me. I got God on my side. I can do this for you. And even further down, Yosef stands in front of Pharaoh. And here is his big chance. He can make believe he's a big shot. And Pharaoh says to him, I heard about you that you can tell over dreams, huh? So what about it, young lad? Do you know what you're doing? You don't know what you're doing. So Pharaoh says, we're on page 224, verse 15. This is chapter 41, Mem Aleph Tezvov, 15. I dreamt a dream of us, and there's nobody to interpret the dream. I heard about you saying, so you hear about dreams and you're able to interpret the dreams. And now listen to what Yosef does. Yosef says to Pharaoh, it's not me. I can't do this. Elokim Yaneh Shlom Paro. You know who is going to give you the answer to the whole thing? God will give you the answer. And then when he tells him, again, the interpretation of the dream, Chof Hey, next page, 226, chapter, verse 25. This is one dream. You know what God's showing you? God's showing you what he's going to be doing to you. He's giving you a premonition of what's to come. Etc., etc. And then he keeps on saying again, if you look further down, 32, why do you have the dream twice? This is happening quickly. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's going to do this right away. He keeps on saying, God, 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 God. That's all Yosef says. Guess what happened in that country when Yosef takes over? They said, we don't know who this guy is, but he showed up with some kind of God that's stronger than everybody else's. And he was able to give us these great pieces of advice, and we were able to take over the world because of his advice. That's a serious God. Yeah? Yosef takes God's name and brings it into Egypt. And then the Jewish people come into Egypt and they're enslaved, and finally God takes them out, and finally they get free, and the whole world knows about God's name. So Yaakov Avinu says, I'm out. I'm not teaching anymore. I'm done. And God says, it's your job to teach the world about me. You can't book out. You have no right to do that. You need to realize this is your mission in life. If you don't do this, then you've lost touch with what you're supposed to be doing. Can't have that happen. And so therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, sorry, not happening. No choice. So that's what happens over here with Yosef. And that's why Yaakov Avinu says, I don't want, that's why Hashem says that Yaakov Avinu is not allowed to sit in peace. I don't want Yaakov to have peace. And the truth is, I think it teaches us a great lesson. We all are ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's never a time you can say, you know what? Today I'm not an ambassador of Hashem. Forget it. My couple's coming off. I don't care. I'll act. I'll behave rudely in the street. I'll talk not nicely to people. Tomorrow I can be ambassador of God again. But not today. What would you say to that? Can't take a break. You don't have, everybody wants a day to be rude. There's no such thing. Today is my rude day. Tomorrow I'm back a godly person. He's having a day off. Do you know what it is? I mean, there's the famous story they tell with Aristotle, that Aristotle was teaching certain things, and then they found him doing very immoral things. So they came to him and they said to him, excuse me, you're Aristotle, how can you behave like that? He says, when I behave like this, I'm not Aristotle. You can't say that. Yeah? Or you had Bertrand Russell, this is the other famous story. Bertrand Russell taught ethics at a certain university, famous British philosopher, and they came to him and they said, but you did things that were unethical. He goes, yeah, that's true, but when I teach maths, do you expect me to be a parallelogram or a triangle? Yeah? Just like in maths, you don't expect me to be a shape, a parallelogram. You don't expect me an ethical person, just going to teach ethics. And we said that's not true. There's never a day where you can be an unethical person. There's never a day where you could just let your guard down and say, today I'm going to be horrible, or today I don't want to teach the world what it is. We are one constant Kiddush Hashem. We have to make one constant Kiddush Hashem. In all our interactions, you meet a Jew, you meet a non-Jew, you meet somebody religious, you meet somebody secular. Whatever it is, you have to be behaving in a way that people say, this is God's person. This person behaves in a godly way. There's just no time to turn around and say, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's what we learned from Yaakov. You get your recompense. Not only that, you get a wonderful time in Shammai. But in this world, the tests that you have are there to show other people, not only A, to turn you into a better person, but B, to show people how you can overcome adversity. There are people that have tremendous tests in their lives, and the way they overcome these tests and the way they overcome this adversity is just unbelievable. It's really something to marvel at. People have taken some adversities that they have and they turned it to their greatest character. They turned this to their most amazing trait. Phenomenal what people have done with the adversity that have been thrown to them. So that's something to learn from. That's a really, really big deal. And therefore, Yaakov Avinu is told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are not allowed to sit just in peace and quiet. We're not going to allow for that. That's not going to happen. Lastly, Eila told us Yaakov. We're back on page 198, chapter 37, Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Base, verse 2. Eila told us Yaakov, these are the children of Yaakov, Yosef and Shvai. So Yosef was 17 years old. He used to shepherd his brothers together with a flock, and he was always together with his brothers from the Bnei Bila and Bnei Zilpah. Vayave Yosef and Yosef brought us their bad slander to his father. So you look at this and you ask yourself the question, what does it mean Eila told us Yaakov Yosef? Eila told us Yaakov means these are the children of Yaakov, and then he just mentions Yosef. So why does he only mention one? And some say told us doesn't mean the children. Told us could also mean the happenings. This is what happened to Yaakov. Well, okay, these are the happenings of Yaakov. Just the story of Yosef. That's the only thing that happened to him. So why do we say Eila told us Yaakov Yosef? I mean, the Rashi says anything that happened to Yaakov happened to Yosef. There are other ideas that are included in this idea. But Rav Sorotskin in his Sefer Osnaim LaTorah says, why did we say Eila told us Yaakov Yosef? And he says it's there to answer a very basic question. If you remember last week, at the end of last week's Sedra, even if you turn a page back, you'll see on page 197, you have over here the art scroll has a very nice a very nice chart over here, genealogical table of Esav's family. You go through exactly what it is that Esav did and who his children were, this one and that one, and who was married to whom. I mean, you see that. And they had children, and they had different princes, and these are the princes of Esav, and these are the kings that reigned for Esav. And you read through this whole story, and you think to yourself, do you know what? It sounds almost unfair. Esav gets everything on a silver platter. And Yaakov has all these issues. Why does Yaakov have all these issues when Esav gets everything on a silver platter? It seems Esav moves away from Yaakov, finds a place to live, everybody lives happily ever after. They have their own kingdom. Things are going well for them. Then you read about Yaakov. By the way, and what happened to the tzaddik? Well, his son got taken by his other brothers, got thrown into a pit, then got sold on. There was nothing to eat. They had to run down to Egypt. Then everybody ended up in Egypt. Then became enslaved. Why did Esav get such an easy ride and Yaakov has it so difficult? Why? Says Rav Sorotsky, the Torah wants to explain to you what's going on over here. And he says something that's beautiful, but frightening as well. He says, you know what the difference was between Yaakov's children and Esav's children? You read about Esav's children and there was a tremendous unity amongst them. They were all together in this. No problem. They all moved down with their father. They all lived next to each other peacefully. When it came time to create a kingdom, they set aside a king. And then when that one died, they set aside another king. And when then that one died, the third king. They had no problem. They had all these kings that they made. What happens with the Jewish people? So read what happens with the Jewish people. Yosef says to his brothers, what's going on with Yosef and his brothers? Yosef comes and tells them, guys, I had a dream. Okay, what's your dream? You know, we were all gathering up stalks of wheat, and then all of your bundles bow down to me. You think you can become king over us? How dare you? Right? That's the response. Now let me ask you a question. Somebody's going to have to be king. Right? So what's your problem? Why are you so jealous? Not only that, if we were to go along with the original biblical way of doing things, what's the biblical way of doing things normally? The firstborn has the rights for these kind of things. So who's the firstborn in this instance? Reuben. So who deserves to be king? Reuben. So who deserves to be miffed then? Reuben. What about everybody else? Shimon, you weren't on the cards. What difference does it make if it's Reuben or if it's Yosef? Levi, the same for you. Yehuda, the same for you. Yisachar, Zvulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Binyamin. Why are you even getting upset? What are you angry about? You weren't in the running for this position. You know, I could sit here in shops and go, you know what? They were looking for a new CEO at Apple and they didn't take me. Of course they didn't take you. They don't know who you are. You're not in the running for it. You didn't put in an application. Even if they saw your application, they'd laugh you out from here to the end of the, They'd take your application and one look and throw it in the bin. Who do you think you are? So if you're not in the running for it, if you have no application, if you're not supposed to be, so why is everybody upset with him? Reuben has a right to be upset. He says, look, I'm supposed to be the king, but everybody else, chill out. You weren't meant to be the king anyway. Couldn't stomach it that Yosef should be it. Why not? If he's the one that God chose, it's not going to be you anyway. If somebody else is, a lot of people are going to be making a lot of money out there on certain things. You're not involved in that. I'm not selling gold, and I'm not selling Bitcoin, etc. So I find out somebody else made millions on Bitcoin. Oh, I'm so jealous. Well, you didn't invest in Bitcoin. What are you jealous about? If you both invested in the same thing and he made money and you didn't, I can understand it. But you weren't even invested in this stuff. You really want to make money on Bitcoin? I'm not saying you should, but you want to make money on Bitcoin, the only way to do it is to be able to invest in it. Or maybe not invest in it, because some people say it's so fluctuating that you don't buy it. Whatever, I don't know about Bitcoin. That's what I'm saying. I'm just mentioning it. I know a lot of people have made a lot of money, a lot of people lost fortunes on it. But you're not in there. What are you angry about it? And Yosef. Vayove Yosef as the bosom royal avim. Yosef is constantly tattling to his father. They're doing this, they're doing that. Why? What for? And you see that this lack of unity amongst the Jewish people. Sadly, Esav's children showed a tremendous display of unity, and Yaakov's children showed a tremendous display of lacking harmony. And so the Torah wants to say to you, do you want to understand it? You read this story and you're perplexed. You read this story and you wonder, how exactly does this story make any sense? How does Esav get it so easy and Yaakov has it so hard? I'll explain it to you. Eila told us Yaakov Yosef. Read what happened with Yosef. Read how they're all upset with each other. Read how they all can't fagin, as they say nicely in Yiddish. One can't allow the other one to be successful. One can't stomach the other person's success. They can't live together with each other in harmony. And God says, if you have no way of living with each other in harmony, you want to have peace and quiet, you can't have peace and quiet in this way. I'll send you down to Egypt. Do you know when people come together, sadly? When we have tzaras. I often think about this. Remember when the 3 boys were kidnapped in 2014? We had the second war over there. When the boys got kidnapped, again, I'm saying this only to bring out the point. There were 3 Mizrahi boys. The same boys probably wouldn't get another look at by lots of people on a regular day. They'd walk on the bus in Eretz Yisrael and everybody would ignore them. Because I'm Haredi, I'm Chiloni, I'm this, I'm that, I'm not these Mizrahi boys. Suddenly they got kidnapped. And what happened? Charedim and Chilonim and national religious and traditional, everybody said our boys got kidnapped. What do you mean your boys? You wouldn't have even looked at the guy yesterday. You would have frowned on him. Do you know what tzaras do? Tzaras change our perspective. Suddenly we see the same kid and we say, that's my brother. How dare you do that to my brother? He wasn't your brother yesterday, he was. You just didn't realize, you didn't focus on it. But the truth is, he's been your brother forever. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us down to Mitzrayim and gives us tzaras there. And we all go through the tzaras of Mitzrayim and we become a nation and then we come out and we say, okay, we understand. We get the point. We get it. But it only works sometimes with tzaras. And Esav, who understood this before having to have tzaras, didn't need to have tzaras. We have peace. God says, you have peace? Here you go. You can have whatever you want to. And it's a shame that sometimes the only way we as Jewish people come together is through tzaras. Why does it take the kidnapping of 3 boys for us to say that Mizrahi kids are also, for Charedim or Chilonim or modern people or whatever, for everybody to say, these are our brothers? Why did it take that? Why can't we see them as our brothers before they get kidnapped? That's much better. It's a much nicer, much straighter way of doing things. We need to realize that that's really who we are. And the more unity we have, the more God says, you have unity, then I don't have to give you tzaras to bring you together. Because the tzaras are only there to bring you together. But you get the point anyway, so fine, so I don't have to give you any tzaras. So hopefully we learn this lesson. Such an important lesson. If we can learn this lesson and internalize this lesson, that's a tremendous thing. And hopefully HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us peace from all the people around us. And just let us live our lives in peace. Mitzvah Hashem, when we learn this lesson. Okay? Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for those on Facebook Live. Thank you for those on Torah Anytime. If you want to get in touch, davideisenberg@gmail.com, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
you
you.
very much.